14 years ago, my family and I moved to Seattle. We came to pastor Westminster Assembly, 90-year-old church now, but it was the first Assemblies of God church planted in the city back in 1923. It had always been a very effective church. It did really well for the first 6 years that we were here. 2004, 2005 though, just seemed like the church fell off a cliff. We simply were shrinking by the rate of attrition. About 15% is the attrition rate in cities. We started really getting into understanding urbanization. That's the single-family houses being torn down and the big multiples being put up, and that brings about a population shift where family-based, basically conservative-oriented people move out, and singles, broken singles primarily, with a lot of liberal secular ideas move in. And we found ourselves in that position of, well, do we move out like several others have, or are we called to stay here and actually move in? So God really began to speak to our hearts that it was up to us. It was our call, it was our journey to move in. We were going to have to learn to love a people that we hadn't learned to love before. At that moment in time, we started trying to understand what a transition would look like from being a congregation-based group to become a mission-based group. We're going to need money to try stuff that's probably going to fail disastrously. Are we okay with that? And in a very bold and an amazing way, they said, yeah, let's do it. So we started trying stuff, and we had, I think, 4, maybe 5 cataclysmic failures. In that process of time, there was this little haunting thing going on in me about the apostolic era and the way they functioned, and even the way that they did communion as a whole dinner event. Let's try to replay to the very best of our ability what that would be like in Seattle. And it was only 6 or 8 weeks afterwards that I and my wife were walking home, and I told her, I think this is our future. CMN came along at a pretty critical time for us. They were willing to invest financially. There's been a lot of bringing of other people to talk to us about our story and give us the chance to trade information back and forth, and us grow from them and they grow from us, hopefully. Their encouragement to just try something new. Even if we crash on the rocks, go do something new. That message was very critical, and it was very timely when we heard that from them. I am very, very thankful. So we took our Sunday morning gathering down to a community center. We served a big feast, a big agape feast to all the neighbors that would come from far and wide, and old and young, and rich and poor, and whoever would join us. In that process, by the time we planted our 3rd one, we realized, wow, these things, there is a sociological factor of the way that they work and the way that the gospel starts to get into people's lives. And it takes a lot longer because they're starting so much further away. To bring somebody into a congregation-based church is a pretty big thing. You're asking them to transform from a self-directed life to a Christ-directed life, while at the same time transforming from an American to a church construct, which is an alternate society. And it's kind of a big journey, it's kind of a big trip. But everybody understands how a dinner table works. It's not an alternate society that you're trying to invite them into. It's I'm in your world and we're just talking about Jesus. When we went to the neighborhoods in their spaces at 5 o'clock on the evenings during the week, they were more than willing to come and sit down and talk about Christ. Their issue is not Christianity, it's churchianity. They'll kind of sit on it for a year before you start seeing much evidence of true spiritual hunger, but then it starts to cross a line, and it just starts, before long they're calling you pastor, and not that long ago they didn't even think they wanted one. There is this sense around food that it's very familial, it's the gospel in visible form, it's Christ giving you sustenance. We really felt like we needed to pick up on that and make it a feast that's abundant. Tables are loaded with food, colorful food, all different kinds of food. It's getting across the picture of abundant grace and abundant favor and a very abundant Christ that is providing for people for that. Before we start talking any about Christ and about his ways. They know Christ is paying this bill. Wow, this is for us and for me, and look at it. Their musicians are playing, artists are painting something from the Gospels. People are serving them and they're sitting down and eating, and then together we get around the table. It's not a thing where the Christians come and serve people. We're all eating together. Then oftentimes what happens is all of the missionaries or the good neighbors that have showed up to help, sitting around the tables, they just start talking and lifting and encouraging, and a lot of times those conversations then turn spiritual. Before long you see people starting to pray for one another, and that one-on-one conversing about Christ is very meaningful, especially when it's week after week after week, building upon week, and people are coming back, and this has become a family for them. For us, we realized we had to learn how to go and prefer those whose life wasn't going very good, and in the name of Christ, lift them and favor them and take this wonderful, abundant feast of a gospel and pour it into their life and treat them like a brother.